Welcome to another episode of Bark Brigade Podcast by Dogzilla Magazine. Today, we're putting aside the usual tips on leash training and diving deep into something far more profound: dogs in the afterlife.
It's a truly compelling subject, and it really forces us to look beyond our modern notion of, just companionship, and instead confront the deep spiritual significance these animals held for our ancestors. Today, we're analyzing a really vast stack of material.
A big one.
It is, yeah. It's primarily drawn from Dogzilla Magazine's special series by Simon Tracy, and he focuses on the historical, the archaeological, and even the psychological dimensions of dogs' roles after death.
And our mission for you, the listener, is to give you a genuine shortcut to understanding the profound and often, I think, surprising roles dogs have played across millennia. We're talking everything from godlike remembrance all the way to guardians of the underworld. We're looking not just at what ancient people believed, but really digging into why they assigned these critical roles to the canines.
Exactly. And my focus today will be to frame this entire discussion around that central question of why. What enduring characteristics of the dog made them the perfect fit for managing the chaos of that transition between life and death? The answers we uncover, well, they tell us a lot about humanity's own changing concept of the soul and eternity.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
With the fundamental veneration of dogs. The source material uses this wonderful phrase, godlike remembrance, to describe their status.
I love that phrase.
It's powerful. It suggests they weren't just cherished. They occupied this sacred space in our collective memory right from the start. So what does this higher status really mean in a practical, ancient context?
Well, it means we have to completely discard the contemporary idea of a dog as, merely a pet. In societies like ancient Egypt and Greece, a dog's status was elevated to something approaching a sacred being. Now, this wasn't universal, of course. Dogs were also used for hunting and for labor. But the high-status dogs were treated with this ritualistic reverence.
And we see evidence of that.
Oh, absolutely. We see it in the elaborate mourning rituals. For instance, if a dog in an Egyptian noble household died, the family might shave off their eyebrows as a public sign of grief.
Wow, shaving your eyebrows. That is a truly profound cultural investment in that animal's life and death.
It is.
It confirms this veneration really elevated them to a status far beyond mere pets.
Precisely. And this high status in life naturally translated into a critical function in death. I mean, if a creature is deemed sacred or exceptionally loyal while it's breathing, it becomes the most logical candidate to assist the soul when the rules of the world break down. And this brings us directly to their core role as guardians.
And this guardianship wasn't just physical protection, like guarding a house. It was spiritual protection. This is where that historical significance of dogs as guardians of the afterlife really comes into play. The idea of the dog being able to navigate the boundary between the living world and the dead realm, a classic psychopomp role.
Yes, and we need to fully explore that term, psychopomp. It comes from the Greek psyche, meaning soul, and pompos, which means guide or escort. A psychopomp is not the deity of the afterlife. It's more like the specialized agent who manages the logistics of the soul's transition.
So they're the spiritual transit authority.
Well, that's a great way to put it.
What are the specific duties implied by that role? I imagine it's more than just, crossing a boundary.
It's significantly more complex. Psychopomps have to retrieve souls who might be lost or confused. They have to ensure they're delivered to the correct entrance or judgment point. And crucially, they have to protect them from malevolent spirits or dangers during that journey. This requires keen senses, loyalty, and an understanding of both realms.
And dogs fit that perfectly.
They do. Dogs, with their acute senses, their known loyalty to humans, and their frequent presence at the margins of civilization, the dark, the wild, the grave, they were observed to possess all the necessary attributes.
That's a powerful connection. The key takeaway, then, is that dogs weren't just tasked with guarding borders. They were actively guiding and protecting souls through the most vulnerable phase of existence. They were the ancient world's trusted spiritual navigators.
And the universality of this assignment, from the Aztecs to the Greeks, it suggests that this connection wasn't just a cultural borrowing. It was an intuitive recognition of the dog's unique biological and behavioral traits that made them so suitable for the role.
So the moment those beliefs solidify, they find their manifestation in these divine figures. Okay, let's unpack this. We have to look at the two most prominent mythological figures linked to the afterlife who use dogs, Anubis and Hecate.
We begin, of course, with Anubis, the undisputed Egyptian guide. His iconography is instantly recognizable. The jackal or dog-headed god, a sentinel over the rites of passage. He wasn't just associated with the dead, he was, in many ways, the technical manager of death.
His pivotal role was immense. He was overseeing the entire mummification process, which was vital for the soul's survival. And then he was guiding the soul, the Ka and the Bat, through the underworld, the Duat. That's a dual responsibility, preserving the body and managing the spirit's safe passage.
And we have to focus on the most important phase of that journey, the weighing of the heart. Anubis wasn't just the guardian of the embalming tables. He was the god who ensured the mechanism of judgment worked correctly. He literally operated the scales, making sure the deceased's heart was balanced against the feather of Mahat, the goddess of truth and cosmic order.
And if it wasn't?
Well, if the heart was too heavy with sin, it was devoured by Amit, the destroyer. So Anubis's role here is meticulous and incredibly high stakes.
What's so fascinating here is how his role evolved. Our sources confirm he was originally linked to things like childbirth and fertility. This shift from life's beginning to life's end is just profound.
It is a massive theological pivot, and it really reflects the development of Egyptian belief itself. In the Old Kingdom, before the concepts of the afterlife were so structured, Anubis held a more general portfolio. He sometimes included fertility. But as the New Kingdom arrived and the cult of Osiris gained dominance, Egyptian theology became obsessed with the formalized judgment of the soul and the journey through the duat.
So as the afterlife got more bureaucratic, Anubis's job narrowed and solidified.
Precisely. He was the perfect deity to manage this new complexity. His association with the jackal animal they observed patrolling the edges of the desert, scavenging near cemeteries, made him the natural patron of boundaries, decay, and transformation. He became indispensable in this refined afterlife system, solidifying his role as the ultimate after-death guide. He adapted his divine portfolio to meet the culture's evolving spiritual needs.
Now let's turn to Hecate, the Greek companion. She displays a similar evolutionary transformation with a much more distinct magical flavor.
Hecate, too, began with associations with childbirth, the earth, and the moon in earlier Greek mythology. But by the classical period, she became inexorably linked with liminal spaces, crossroads, doorways, the night, and of course, the realms of magic and the dead. She became a powerful chthonic goddess.
And her canine connection is vital here. She was often depicted leading a pack of spectral hounds, sometimes called hellhounds, which were believed to be her companions and assistants in leading souls.
Right, her dogs are agents of her will. They are not gentle guides like Anubis. They are often terrifying, howling entities that announce her presence. They assist her in her duties as the goddess of the three ways, the literal spiritual crossroads where decisions about the soul's path were made. This just reinforces the dog's role as the creature of the boundary, the one who knows the paths that are unseen by human eyes.
So what does this all mean then? The evolution of both Anubis and Hecate, from deities of birth and flourishing to these specialized guides of the dead. It reflects not just the complex, shifting nature of ancient mythology, but the permanent and necessary placement of the dog in the spiritual economy.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it suggests that when ancient societies defined the afterlife, when they structured the journey of the soul, they quickly realized they needed an entity that was trustworthy, loyal, and capable of navigating transitions. The dog provided the mythological template for this essential function. They were creatures of loyalty in life, so they became the embodiment of reliable guidance in death.
That's a powerful transition, showing how the dog moved from protector in life to manager of spiritual transition in death.
Now let's move beyond specific pantheons to the universal symbolism of dog guardians. We're focusing on figures that bridge different mythologies, which really proves this is a global archetype.
Indeed. The existence of these analogous figures across non-contact cultures is perhaps the most compelling argument for the dog's intrinsic link to the spiritual world. And the immediate image that springs to mind for most of us is, of course, Cerberus, the ultimate containment figure in Greek mythology, the ferocious three-headed dog creature. His role was so clearly defined, guarding the entrance to Hades to ensure no soul could escape the underworld. And importantly, no living being could enter without permission.
Cerberus represents the rigid enforcement of the cosmic order. The symbolism of his three heads has been debated for centuries, often interpreted as representing the three ages of humanity, past, present, and future, or maybe the destructive elements of nature that guard the gates. He is the ultimate deterrent, the embodiment of hell's ironclad security system.
He is pure containment. But what happens when we jump continents and look at the Aztec equivalent, Xolotl? The role shifts significantly, even though the species, the dog, remains the same.
Xolotl, the Aztec dog god, provides a really powerful contrast to Cerberus. He's depicted as a monstrous yet revered figure, often linked to deformity, lightning, and the evening star. And he is, crucially, the twin brother of Quetzalcoatl, embodying duality and movement.
And his specific task was fundamentally different from Cerberus's lockdown mission. Xolotl served as the necessary guide for the souls of the deceased, assisting them in navigating the specific challenges of Mictlan, the Aztec underworld.
This is where we need to dive into the detail. Mictlan was not some generalized concept of the afterlife. It was a grueling 4-year journey through 9 increasingly treacherous levels. Xolotl's guidance was practical.
And what were these specific challenges that necessitated a dog guide?
Well, the first and most important was crossing the vast, deep river of Apennawaya. Souls could not cross alone. The dog, often ritually sacrificed and buried with the deceased, was believed to transform and carry the soul across this crucial watery obstacle. And subsequent levels involved traversing mountains that crashed together, plains swept by obsidian winds, and landscapes inhabited by flesh-eating spirits. The dog's acute senses and loyalty were viewed as essential for survival through these 4 years of relentless trial.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the parallels between Cerberus and Xolotl are fascinating. They demonstrate a shared independent cultural assignment of similar roles to dogs, the boundary manager, but with vastly different execution. Cerberus blocks the exit. Xolotl enables the entrance and the journey itself.
It suggests that the observation of the dog's nature led cultures independently to the same conclusion. This creature holds the key to the liminal space. Whether that key is used to lock the door, like with Cerberus, or unlock the path forward, like Xolotl and Anubis, the dog's placement at the boundary is universal. This is a kind of theological convergence, stemming from a deeply held understanding of canine loyalty and protective instinct.
That profound spiritual status must have had a major impact on how they lived. Let's trace the timeline of the human-dog bond, showing how it evolved from that deep spiritual significance to the companionship we cherish today.
The spiritual roots were pervasive. We see deep ties even in the most secretive religious rites, like the Eleusinian mystery cult in ancient Greece. These were rites centered around the goddesses Demeter and Persephone, often involving themes of death, rebirth, and the changing seasons.
The Eleusinian mysteries were famously secretive, right? Participants were forbidden from disclosing their rites under penalty of death. So why would dogs be associated with such an exclusive, powerful spiritual experience?
Well, scholars suggest a few reasons. Firstly, dogs were often used in purification rituals, connecting them to concepts of cleanliness before entering the sacred space. Secondly, and perhaps more profoundly, their association with Hecate and the underworld meant they represented the knowledge of the unseen world. And that knowledge was central to the mystery's promise of a better afterlife. Their presence kind of hinted at the secrets of the transition.
So they were part of the sacred atmosphere, signaling the proximity of hidden knowledge. And then we see the gradual transition begin. As societies evolved and organized religion shifted away from polytheism and mystery cults, the perception of dogs began to change.
The shift wasn't sudden. As large empires arose, like the Roman Empire, and later as Christianity spread, the mythological deities lost their central authority. Dogs transitioned from being agents of gods like Anubis and Hecate to being, functional, loyal protectors and members of the household. Their perceived connection to magic and the underworld sometimes made them suspect in early Christian contexts, but their core value, loyalty, and protection remained inviolable.
The protective instincts stayed valued, but the spiritual role was sort of internalized, becoming a secularized loyalty.
Exactly. The functional bond replaced the mythological bond, and we see the final maturation in the modern bond. In the modern world, dogs are integral companions, offering unconditional love, emotional support, and security. They fill a profound psychological need.
And the core idea here is that despite this massive shift in roles, from guiding the dead through the duat to providing emotional support during a pandemic, the deep-rooted connection celebrated in ancient myths continues to thrive today. The loyalty transcends time.
The translation is perfect. The attributes that made them great psychopomps, loyalty, keen sensitivity, protection, are the exact attributes we now value in a therapeutic companionship capacity. The ancient need for a dependable guide has simply been recontextualized into a modern need for a dependable presence. We've spent a lot of time discussing the stories and the spiritual beliefs. But this raises a really important question. Do we have physical evidence that backs up these powerful myths? We need to move from the scroll to the shovel.
Yes, and recent scientific and archaeological research confirms the deliberate, ritualistic veneration of dogs in ancient societies. This isn't just theory, it's confirmed by grave goods and burial practices.
The work of archaeologist Dr. Eric Turingi, an expert on ancient canine remains, provides critical insight into this ritualistic behavior. His research confirms the intentionality behind the bond extending into the grave.
What were his findings exactly? How could he determine that a burial was deliberate versus, just accidental or casual?
Dr. Tourney's analysis looked closely at the condition of the remains, the context of the burial, and patterns in dog selection across different sites. And his findings reveal that dogs buried alongside humans were not a random assortment of animals. They were often deliberately selected based on specific characteristics like notable size, a certain color, or even perhaps specific physical capabilities they showed in life.
That is the critical insight. It means ancient people were basically curating the perfect spiritual companion. If they were choosing a specific large or black dog, for example, it wasn't just sentimental. It indicated a non-random choice rooted in cultural beliefs about the dog's necessary role in the afterlife.
Precisely. They were investing in a spiritual insurance policy. I mean, if your journey requires crossing a freezing river or fending off a demonic spirit, you don't take a weak animal. You take the dog you believe is best equipped for the supernatural task. And this validates the mythological need for capable, specialized guides.
We see this tangible evidence most profoundly in Egypt, tying back directly to the worship of Anubis.
Absolutely. The archaeological record in Egypt is just immense. We have the incredible discovery of dog remains and canine-themed artifacts in ancient Egyptian tombs. We can point specifically to the Anubis shrine of Tutankhamun, which held artifacts acknowledging the god's importance to the deceased.
But beyond just the royal tombs, the sheer scale of dog veneration is astounding, particularly at places like Saqqara.
Saqqara, near Memphis, is home to a vast catacomb dedicated to Anubis worship. It's estimated to contain millions of mummified dogs, interred across centuries as offerings to the deity. This wasn't simply a matter of burying beloved pets. This was an industrial, continuous religious act, underscoring the belief that the dog or jackal entity was a crucial intermediary between mortals and the gods who oversaw the afterlife.
The implication is clear. This provides irrefutable, tangible evidence of their venerated status and the deep, abiding belief that dogs were essential guides and protectors in the afterlife. The sheer volume of mummified dogs speaks louder than any myth.
It connects the philosophy to the action. They believed it, and they acted on it by preparing dogs ritually for this eternal duty. It confirms the dog was an active, specialized participant in the ancient spiritual landscape.
So we have the mythical structure and the archaeological proof. That intense ritualistic bond didn't just disappear with the rise of modern science. It manifested in new ways, particularly concerning grief and remembrance.
It transformed into highly formalized cultural rituals that acknowledged the dog's importance outside of a direct spiritual mandate. And the ultimate manifestation of that is the modern phenomenon of pet cemeteries.
The origin story of the pet cemetery is a really key marker of societal change. The first public one opened in the late 1800s. This movement, often citing the famous Hyde Park Gate Pet Cemetery in London, marked a crucial societal shift.
That shift was the formal recognition that the death of a companion animal warranted dedicated, perpetual commemoration, mirroring human burial rites. It codified the idea that grieving a pet was legitimate and deserving of a dedicated physical space, rather than just a backyard burial.
And if you visit these sites today, the gravestones themselves become these tangible, moving expressions of that deep emotional connection. The inscriptions are often incredibly heartfelt, reflecting the dog's personality and their specific role in the family.
Exactly. They are small, personalized monuments influenced heavily by changing trends in human cemeteries. They're moving away from rigid religious iconography toward personalized tributes that focus on love, loss, and reunion. It's a secularized expression of the age-old desire for an eternal bond.
But outside of formalized grief, the symbolic roles of dogs in death and beyond continue to permeate folklore. And often they revert to the darker, more fearful aspects of their liminal status.
Yes, we still see the persistent legend of the black dog or the hellhound across Britain and Northern Europe. These are powerful, terrifying images of dogs associated not with guidance, but with foreboding.
In these traditions, the black dogs are consistently cast as harbingers of death or guides to the underworld, basically omens of impending doom. What differentiates them from the helpful psychopomp figures we discussed earlier?
The black dog, sometimes known regionally as Padfoot or the Barghest or the Gytrash, is usually seen near ancient boundaries, crossroads, or execution sites again, those liminal spaces. But crucially, they are often shapeshifters or spectral beings, signaling that the boundary has been crossed against the human's will. They're less about gentle guidance and more about marking the inevitability of the encounter with death. They represent the wild, untamable aspect of the underworld.
And we find that complex duality encapsulated perfectly in the figure of the Cadeo in Central American folklore.
The Cadeo is a brilliant representation of the complex and often ambivalent nature of the human-dog relationship. It's a mythical dog-like creature existing in two distinct forms. The evil Cadeo, typically black with glowing red eyes, which lures drunken or wandering individuals to their demise. It's often associated with sin and transgression.
And the camera figure.
The good Cadeo. Usually white, it often appears to protect individuals from danger, particularly when they are vulnerable, serving as a silent, benevolent guide.
These symbolic roles really highlight how the dog remains the creature of the threshold, sometimes guide, sometimes threat. They seem to represent a moral crossroads, depending on the human state and the nature of the danger.
The underlying function is always liminal. Whether benevolent or malevolent, the dog exists to manage the transition and interaction between the human world and the spiritual boundary. This enduring symbolic role confirms that, culturally, we still see the dog as possessing knowledge of the places we cannot go.
Let's pivot to the psychological impact. Given this deep historical and cultural investment, it makes sense that the loss of a dog is so profoundly affecting.
The loss of a dog is deeply emotional and can be prolonged precisely because of the unique nature of the bond. Its unconditional love, shared routine, and their constant, non-judgmental presence. Their absence leaves a significant, highly visible void in the domestic sphere.
And it's important to recognize that ancient societies validated this grief. Our sources mention dog sacrifices in ancient societies made to honor their lives and ensure their well-being in the afterlife.
While difficult for us to contemplate today, those rituals were a profound public acknowledgement of the dog's importance. They weren't meaningless acts. They were serious attempts to mitigate grief and ensure the animal, which was essential for the journey, was properly equipped for the next world. It confirms the dog was viewed as having a continuous existence beyond the physical realm.
Today, modern solace takes the form of memories, shared love, and community support during grief, particularly during holidays or special occasions when their absence is felt most keenly. We substitute ritual for shared emotional recognition.
And that emotional connection is continuously reinforced by the enduring legacy of canine deities and figures.
The influence of figures like Anubis, Cerberus, and Xolotl continues to resonate today, shaping our appreciation of dogs and inspiring modern art, literature, and popular culture. We recognize their archetype instinctively.
These mythological figures provide a foundational narrative for the dog's spiritual importance. Scholars like Peter Meineck, who focuses on ancient Greek mythology, underscore that this fascination persists because the figures speak to a fundamental human concern: what happens after death, and who can help us get there. The dog remains the answer.
All of this history, all this archaeology, all this grief, it leads us to the ultimate age-old question: do dogs go to heaven?
It's a question that drives the bond. Ancient beliefs, as we saw with the Aztecs, certainly provided a pathway where a dog would guide the deceased through the underworld. For them, the dog's afterlife was explicitly linked to the humans.
The modern debate surrounding this question reflects a significant cultural shift. We've seen religious leaders weigh in, like Pope Francis, whose comments suggesting that animals may have a place in heaven challenged centuries of traditional doctrine that often denied animals a soul or eternal reward.
That moment reflected the cultural pressure being exerted by the modern companion-animal bond. The intensity of modern love and grief demanded a theological answer that allowed for reunion. The cultural desire for reunion is incredibly strong, finding expression in literature and film, notably in tales like the animated classic All Dogs Go to Heaven.
The conclusion, ultimately, is that while the answer remains a matter of personal spiritual belief, the pervasive idea of reuniting with our companions, whether guided by Anubis, Xolotl, or just pure faith, brings great solace. It proves that the human-canine bond is so powerful, we have culturally and historically demanded that it transcend the boundaries of life and death.
The dog's journey is truly humanity's journey. Their spiritual role is a reflection of our own enduring hopes and fears about the unknown.
This journey has taken us from the revered status of dogs in ancient Egypt, through the terrifying gates guarded by Cerberus, and right up to the archaeological proof of their importance in the grave. We embrace the mystery and celebrate the enduring sacred connection. Thanks for listening, the Bark Brigade podcast.
If you want to continue exploring on this topic, visit Dogazilla magazine for healthy dog lifestyle at dogazilla.com.
As you reflect on this deep dive, take a moment to consider Dr. Torini's findings about the deliberate selection process for dogs in ancient burial practices. The question isn't just if dogs go to the afterlife, but how carefully ancient people prepared them for that journey, seeking the perfect guide. Consider what specific characteristic of your own dog, their unmatched bravery, their keen ability to sense a coming storm, or perhaps a rare, significant color, would make them the perfect guide for your eternal journey.